It's just a science project.
Silent breed is people!
You know, a doctor friend once said the same thing to me. Frankenstein was his name.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
That sounds like something out of science fiction.
Please explain to me the scientific nature of the whammy.
We live in a spaceship, dear.
So?
Yes, science!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Hello and welcome to episode 227 of Science on Top for Sunday the 22nd of May 2016. I'm Ed Brown and I'm joined by Dr. Shane Joseph.
G'day.
And Lucas Randall.
Hi.
And coming up we'll be talking about zombie crabs, Mayan cities and what's causing autism this week.
Sorry.
But let's begin with the story of the teenager who may have discovered a lost Mayan city. William Gadari, a 15-year-old from Quebec, came up with a hypothesis about where the Mayans built their cities. And so, like any teenager, he enlisted the help of the Canadian Space Agency to help him test it. Shane, he found what appear to be man-made structures, and so the story immediately went viral. Tell us all about these Mayan pyramids that he found.
Well, so apparently Mayan pyramids, there's some speculation that they might have lined up with bright stars in the sky, and therefore he looked at these bright stars in the sky and said, okay, this one correlates to that one correlates to that one. Oh, there's a missing part here. I'm going to get the Canadian Space Agency to photograph this part and see if there is something there. And yeah, there appears to be something man-made in that little spot. So, you know, it could be a Mayan pyramid that's buried under layers of jungle. But it also could be something like a field.
Yeah, all you can really see is it looks kind of
square.
Square and flat.
I'm guessing someone could, you could actually confirm this very soon.
I assume it must be in some remote part of Mexico that.
Yeah, that's part of the problem because it's really hard to get to this area because it's in very thick jungle. But Thomas Garrison, an anthropologist, was quoted as saying these are very likely to be relic cornfields based on his. So
not even new cornfields, like not even current stuff. Like we're talking.
Yeah,
old cornfields,
which have some value anyway.
Just cool in itself, really.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, we don't really know at the moment. I like that he had a theory, he hypothesized, and then contacted the Canadian Space Agency, who got him, just to clarify, they just got him some images from NASA and JAXA and said, here's some images we prepared earlier. And he had a look at them going, ha! There's a thing where I said there would be a thing. And people started going, there's a thing!
Yeah.
And they found a thing.
And like I said off air, chumps on social media share things like chumps on social media do, and they shared it like a virus.
Well, and this is the sort of situation where whenever there's bad science reported, the blame lies in so many people's courts. The news organisations should have been a lot more diligent in reporting this. They should have followed up. They should have done some.
I think I
mock if you will.
I don't think there's been bad science here. There just has been bad science reporting because it's been reported as, oh my God, this thing has happened. Yeah. And it's like, well, okay.
This child has shown up millions of scientists. Ha ha ha. That's basically what it sounds like.
And they're baffled. They always are. The thing is, I mean, it could turn out to be something. Even as I say, even if it is just a cornfield. If it's a cornfield from the Mayans, then it's probably travelled in time and made a calendar of its own or something.
What?
And all the other myths that are linked to the Mayans.
Yeah,
but it's still kind of cool. And I like the fact that in Canada you can just ring the space agency, hey, I have a thing, and can you help? And they've gone, sure, why not? We're not doing anything this week. Here's some photos. But the guy from the Canadian Space Agency, where was it? He said something like he was really there. Here we go. Daniel Delisle, I assume that's how you say it, of the Canadian Space Agency, said he was fascinated by the depth of Gowdery's research, and that linking the position of the stars and the lost city is quite exceptional. So that's good. Someone thought it was very cool that he did all this work.
It is a cool idea, and I mean we all know like the pyramids are built with certain alignments to constellations and to certain stars and everything. I haven't been able to get a fully fleshed out hypothesis for what he's talking about with the Mayans. I mean, it sounds like he's just looked at bright stars now, and see, I'm confused because you can pinpoint where cities might be based on bright stars.
Yeah. But what he's done is he's looked at constellations, the brightest stars in constellations, and he's overlaid these with known Mayan sites. And he's actually found a correlation between certain constellations and the patterns of various cities. So here's a city here, a city there, a city there. Oh my God, those three cities line up with a constellation. There's one missing. There should be one here. That's what he's done. And it wasn't like he just looked at some maps and gone, oh, look at that. He said in the thing, this is actually 3 years worth of work that this teenager did. So it's not like he just, just came out with this idea and rang the space agency.
Yeah. I was going to say, but this correlation especially between constellations, it could be random. I mean, did the Mayans even have the same constellations that we do?
Yeah,
like were they did.
Well, they didn't lump them into
stars?
Constellations, but the same stars would have been more or less in the same places.
Stars, yes. So some that we tend to see over and over again. For example, with the Egyptians, they had a fascination with Orion because Orion is visible in both hemispheres, and the pyramids at Giza actually lined up with the orientation of Orion back then. Back when they built the pyramids, because the Earth's orbit does where we point does change. So the current North Star, for example, wasn't always the current North Star. So things do move around, and the pyramids at Giza are lined up with, I think it was the position or the alignment of the major stars of the Orion constellation back when it would have been solstice, one of the solstices during their year, when they built them. So we do see this happen quite a lot in ancient civilizations, that they've used certain times of the year and the alignments of certain constellations in their time in order to tell them when it's time to sow crops, for example, or when it's time to harvest or whatever. So that does crop up quite a lot. So it's certainly not a huge leap that they would have done something to do with constellations, because it was something that was really dear to them. And I think this is something I often talk about with people. If we happen to be out and about and it's a very dark night and you have just a really good sky, it really strikes me that it's not a big leap to imagine why the stars were so important to the ancients, because they just could see so many of them, and it's pretty awe-inspiring when you look up. So, in and of itself, it's a reasonable, hypothesis, I think. But it's one of those things. For example, discovering Neptune or Pluto, is the signs are indicating we should look here, and he looked here, and there was a thing. Whether it was a cornfield or anything else, there was definitely a thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's what I'm a little disappointed with. Is everyone seems to now be desperate to try and point out how wrong he is, and how terrible that is that he got it wrong, and we were all duped by this guy, when that's not the case at all. He merely had a hypothesis and went and tested it, which is more than most people do anyway.
I agree, and that also annoyed me, because there seems to be this thing, and it's exactly what Shane was saying about what did you call them? The chumps. Chumps, just like
and that's the point. I think I actually think that's the main thing. Like, that's what people are attacking here, not the kid. Because, I think the kid actually had as you said, a fairly good hypothesis, and he tested it, and he did 3 years' work on this. So, hell, that's more than I did when I was 15. Jesus Christ, I was too busy looking at my,
adult.
But the thing is that, it's just this sort of viral, blind sharing of stuff that gets me, without peer review, without fact checking, without anything. It just annoys me. And
if this had been reported as a teen has proposed an hypothesis which has been backed by some evidence, it wouldn't have got headlines.
Of course not. No, of course not. But that's not the point, though. The point is that it's just annoying still. Like, I don't know.
It is. But I'm also annoyed now by the 180s that people are doing. It's like, oh, stupid kid. So do.
Oh no! As I said, man. At 15 years of age, I was too busy.
Let's not go into what you were doing. I don't think we need to know that.
I certainly wasn't pouring through, photographs that NASA gave me looking for mine.
I'm looking at constellations.
Whoa! Look at this one.
But the problem with, I think, the social media phenomenon at the moment is that it is so fast compared with good science, which takes time. And I mean, this was 3 years just to get the hypothesis tested and to come up with some sort of maybe even a theory. It takes even longer than that often to get that hypothesis or theory tested and then proven or disproven or whatever. But we don't wait for that sort of time. We see something and it's bang, publish, because you've got to publish all the time, because if you don't publish, then you don't get ad clicks and readers and all of that.
Yeah.
But then you've got to share it because you want to be the first to share this amazing story.
Yeah.
And nowhere is it truly backed up until months later.
And it isn't even publish or perish because it wasn't even a published study. It was just...
I mean, or news organisations.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but that is a common saying that you hear. But in this case, it bypassed that even, and went straight to. I think it even bypassed a press release. As far as I understand, it just went straight to a.
That's a good point. I don't know how the story first started, but
I don't know either. Actually, I did see a link to something as reported in the Telegraph. So,
oi,
yeah.
Quality there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm clicking on links right now as we speak. If I lose you, I've been attacked by viruses. The other thing that I know
web surfing, you're doing it wrong.
There was another person. Who are they? An archaeologist Jeffrey Braswell from University of California. He said that he's actually familiar with this area. He's been to this area, and one of the two rectangular features that were identified is the edge of a dried seasonal lagoon, and would be likely either a field with weeds in it or a field of weed. The other possibility is saying marijuana fields are quite common in the area, so that actually would be kind of cool too. I think using constellations to predict where the weed is.
Yeah, I think 15-year-old finds marijuana is not the story that you're thinking of. That's not
but the lengths he went to find it, I think, are very impressive.
Oh, jeez.
Good on him anyway.
Anyway, I think good on him. Yeah, absolutely. It's good on him. Shame on the Telegraph.
And all the other news organisations that reported it as fact and science.
And all the morons who keep sharing it because, Charles find stuff.
Okay, I'm going to run that through Google Translate later on to find out what you said, but...
don't bother, you know what it's going to say.
All right. Lucas, we love a good Parasite story.
I love parasites. They're awesome.
Do you want to tell us all about the barnacle that's turning Alaskan king crabs into zombies?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the show Deadliest Catch. I've been watching that for many years. And so I've seen a lot of these crabs on TV at least, and they're freaking huge. These are big, big crabs. They're not called king crabs because, they like gold or something. And the meat in these crabs, they're caught for the meat in their legs, and their legs are massive. So, they're quite a prized catch. But this parasite, which is actually a type of barnacle, which really surprised me, it basically hijacks the king crab. And we've seen this sort of parasite action before in wasps with ants and stuff like this, where they'll go and they'll lay their eggs inside another creature, and they kind of hijack that creature's systems to their own evil purposes. Well, actually, just their life cycle. There's no evil.
It's kind of evil, dude.
It's evil to us because it just seems really wrong, and probably to the crab. Mind you, these crabs seem to just get along with the business of doing what they have to do to make this parasite's larvae survive. Basically, these things lay their eggs inside the crab, and then the crab, whether it's a male or a female, effectively builds this egg sac inside of it, where the female would normally have her own egg sac. And they have this cycle of looking after it, where they kind of flap their abdomen around to aerate it, and they clean it and look after it until it's ready to hatch. And other than that, if it's a male, they kind of turn it into a gelding, if you like. If it was a horse, it basically just becomes a slave to this. Say again?
So it sterilizes them. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So and they take on the traits of a female caring for the eggs, and then eventually it releases the eggs, and then the cycle continues. It wasn't clear from the story whether the crab dies as a result of this parasite, but that's actually part of the point of the story, because these parasites have been known for quite some time. In fact, back in the 80s, there was quite a big infection that took place in one particular area in Alaska, in southeast Alaska. And apparently, although this has not been an issue since then, that particular infection took out about 86% of the population. And as a result, which is why I assume there is some effect on the crab, or certainly its ability to reproduce, the crab population in this particular area is much, much lower than it used to be. So it hasn't happened since then. But there are links, or potential links, to climate change, because these parasites are actually much more active in warmer water.
Right.
So as the oceans are warming, as we know they are, this could become more of an issue. On the flip side, however, they are less active in low saline water. So if there's more fresh water in the sea than salt water, which could happen with glacial melt, then that might actually counteract the effects of the warming water. So we don't know. And that's kind of the point of this student doing the study. She's a PhD student doing the study, because even she didn't know about this before. Her professor sort of said to her, hey, maybe this is a topic you should do. So she is now looking into this, and she's done a study already on the larval period of the life cycle, and she's moving on now to track through the entire life cycle to try and fill in the blanks, because very, very little study has been done about this. But yeah, kind of cool.
It's fascinating, but the more important question that I have is, does it affect the meat? Can you still eat them even though it's infected? Really?
Yeah, you can, because it doesn't have any effect at all on the legs, which is where the meat of the king crab is actually eaten. So she said that you can eat the meat from these things, but if you did crack open this abdominal cavity, you'd find this very unattractive looking kidney sort of shape inside if it was still carrying the larval sac, and that's not what you want. And you wouldn't eat that, but you wouldn't normally be eating what's in there anyway. This particular crab. So she said, look, it won't harm you. There's no sign of the parasite in the legs, but part of the problem though is because the fisheries ban the crab fishers from taking female crabs, because they're obviously important for the next generation of crabs. Yeah. So they manage the fisheries by saying there are size limits on these crabs. You have to get them over a certain size, and also if they're a female, you have to throw them back. Now the problem with this parasite is it does sort of stunt the growth of the males, and it can make them appear to be females, which means there might be an artificial selection thing going on here where the fishermen are taking them and throwing them back, but they're taking the healthy males away, which might then increase a population. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's kind of an artificial selection taking place as well, which is something to be aware of. And this is, again, why this study may turn out to be quite important for these fisheries. She also seeks, and I don't know if you said her, it's Lee Sloan is her name, from the University of Alaska School of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. And the part of the outcome from this is to try and train the fisheries managers to be aware of this particular parasite and to be on the lookout for it, so that they can adjust fishing practices if need be. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I like it when there's things that we know about but don't sort of know much about them, and that's where we've got to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of doing science and doing research, is you find these information and you find where it could be dangers and where there could be issues with it. So
yeah, exactly.
Very cool, and hopefully a way to control it. All right, so we've heard for decades that pregnant women or women who are trying to conceive should be taking folate or folic acid to help protect against birth defects like spina bifida. But last week, Johns Hopkins University put out a press release saying they had done research that showed a significant link between folate and autism. Now, Shane, this is dodgy on so many levels. But to begin with, what was the study and what do they claim it showed?
So, the study was actually looking at pregnant women who, I think it was a cohort of something like 1,300 women. I might be wrong. Let me find this. So, yeah, 1,391 people who were taking prenatal vitamins. And what they found was that certain women who had an excess of folate in their blood, and we're not talking like a normal amount, we're talking an excess, like toxic levels, this could correlate with a risk of having a child who would later be diagnosed on the autism spectrum. Okay.
Sorry, you said toxic levels.
Well, yeah, or yeah, well, as in
probably going to be some other issues.
Yeah, that sounds
from the toxic levels of the thing.
Well, yeah, pretty much levels over your advised amount.
Okay.
So essentially, from what I understand about this, people who are popping folate pills like their vitamin C tablets, like a lot of people do, or
Okay, so
like,
it's really significantly excessive,
quite high. And what it's interesting. The article that Ed has kindly provided us with goes behind the whole reason of why we add folate to people. Well, why we add folate to a lot of processed foods, because apparently the processing can sometimes strip folate away from foods, and why we also advise pregnant women to have folate, because it can, a lack of it can lead to spina bifida, etc. However, it has been this study sort of saw a correlation between levels that were very high and autism. The problem is that this press release, which was titled "Too Much Folate in Pregnant Women Increases Risk for Autism Study Suggests," automatically leads to a, oh my god, we have been wrong all this time about, folate. And of course the autism spectre, which as soon as you seem to mention it, people sort of start to twitch. And this led to many articles, from Fox, which, no surprises there, to the Telegraph, again, no surprises there, but,
it was pretty widespread.
It was widespread, yeah. And talking to the researchers, funnily enough, they're like, yeah, we didn't really want this to be the case. This reminds me of a great segment on the John Oliver Last Week Tonight show, which was a couple of weeks ago. He did this awesome segment on science and science reporting, and how it can be misconstrued, how press releases can oversimplify things, how people with a very trigger-happy finger can spread, like the last story about the Mayan thing.
Bit of a theme tonight.
How sort of wrong science or incorrect or inaccurate science can spread very quickly because of someone misreporting it, or even sometimes the researchers themselves looking for an angle to get headlines and simplifying the science. And this is a clear case of this, I think, from what I understand. But again, the researchers did not mean to suggest that folate causes autism. It's not that at all. It's like they say, if you've got a lot of it in your system, it could lead to this, or there's a link to it. It's very frustrating when you read these sorts of things, and you see this sort of very shoddy reporting being done, and it's something very important. And
yeah, I think it comes up all the time for us, doesn't it? It's kind of an ongoing theme with not just us, but all science communicators, that correlation does not equal causation. It's just one of those things that, yes, it can be a sign that we need to look here, but that's it. That's all it is. That's all it ever is okay, we need to know more. But then, of course, the outlets get in on it and start to draw those links and scare the crap out of people. And we're still, after all this time, suffering the enormous effects of Wakefield's study, which was, absolutely torn apart and, demonstrably wrong. It was withdrawn by the publication that published it in the first place, which was a huge mistake. But now that's had an effect on immunisation rates for measles, mumps and rubella around the whole world.
Yep.
Especially in the more educated areas, because they're, as you said before, Shane, the social media helps drive this, and then you end up with this Google flood that occurs, that when people look into these types of issues, and understandably, if a parent has had a child who has been diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum, they're going to want to know what they can about it, and they're going to look into it. And they look into it, and if they're faced with this flood of crap like this, which the media are shoving down their throat, saying, "Oh, this is the cause. This is one of the causes of autism. You need to avoid drinking water when you're pregnant."
dihydrogen monoxide is
share
dangerous.
this stuff.
Yeah.
And concerned parents share this stuff with other parents, saying, "Oh, just make sure you don't, eat blue swimmer crab because that." it's just.
But it kind of also becomes victim blaming. It's autism. Oh, did you have too much folate when you were pregnant? It's not.
Which is and now talk about a bloody fine line. It's like if you didn't have folate, well, here are the issues that you're going to cause for your child if you had too much, but now you're going to cause them autism.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
And what's
You're a guilty mum either way.
And also, I mean, what's important about this is that this study did show that if you actually do have folate, your risk of having a child with muscular dystrophy decreases dramatically. So that confirms that finding. So in some ways, I mean, look, I don't have a child. I don't know anybody who has a child with autism, but I know that if I had a child, I'd rather it'd be diagnosed with autism than muscular dystrophy for a start. It's a real, as I said before, it's a real sort of spectre of the autism thing. Like, it's become this horrible word. It's almost sickening how much it's been demonized.
We should also point out that this study hasn't even been published in a peer-reviewed journal.
No,
yet.
exactly. It hasn't
presented at a medical
and this
conference.
is the other problem I want to get into. Like, this stuff reaches the news before it has a chance to be peer-reviewed, before it has a chance to be scrutinized by scientists who can see, well, does this stand up? But before there are layers that you have to go through before you can accept something as scientific fact, and one of those is peer review. And if we're all of a sudden getting news about things that before it's even past that, and it's being paraded about a scientific fact, and there are so many of these facts. And again, I do encourage people to watch this segment, this John Oliver segment.
We'll have a link to it.
Yeah, have a link to it because it's amazing. Like, it shows that there are so many examples of this kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And it's compounded by other things that are a result of that peer review process and the publishing process as well, which is the publication bias. Because studies that show a null effect, that they show there was no effect, they don't get published,
or not as much anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unless they sought, that was the actual aim of the study to prove.
Or not even then. Like, it has to be something that's fairly controversial. Like, I don't know, something.
Sex doesn't lead to babies.
Yeah.
Wow. More research needed, I think.
Yes, much more research needed. If something's very sort of an established scientific fact, or has been considered to be an established scientific fact, and then there's a study that comes along and irrefutably proves that, that's going to get published, as long as it stands up and as long as it's reproducible, which is another problem because reproduction studies also very rarely get published because who cares? No one wants to, no one wants to publish a confirmatory study. But that's a whole other problem. I mean, it's the to be first.
You're more likely to get studied if you repeat the experiment exactly and you're unable to confirm it.
Well,
get cited. As a You know what I mean? We do come across those. At least they exist.
Well, I mean, a prime example is that the stem cell one article. I'm finding from was about it last year. The Japanese group,
the STAP,
which people tried to reproduce it and they couldn't, and that immediately put up red flags. So yes, it does happen. But yeah. Anyway, that's my rant for the night.
Well, while we're talking about bad science reporting, I want to address some feedback that we've got on the show.
What did I do wrong now?
What?
Well, no, it was all of us, really. We were talking about Carpageddon and the plans to introduce herpes into the Murray River. And Michelle Franklin from the Darwin Skeptics up in the Northern Territory, one of our listeners, she wrote in to say that we might want to reconsider our stance on biological controls, because we were talking about our track record in Australia being not so good. We introduced cane toads to wipe out, I think it was like a locust or something, which didn't wipe out the locust and just spread and became a massive pest.
It was a cane beetle, yeah.
Cane beetle, okay. And we introduced myxomatosis to try and reduce the number of... Well, actually, rabbits themselves, I think, were a biological control that we...
No, rabbits were just... English people were really homesick.
Yeah, wanted to eat them and hunt them.
I'll start that again, because cats we released to stop the rabbits.
Oh, did we really?
In the 1890s, 300 cats were released
Oh, dear
in the
God.
west of South Australia.
And look how that turned out. Yeah, great.
Yeah, it didn't stop the rabbits, but they spread, they reproduced, and they became a pest as well.
So I guess they're the genesis of the panther.
Yeah.
That's seen all over the country. It's like, I swear I was a panther.
No, I think that's just overactive imagination. And so carp, we also introduced into the Murray River to control the plants growing there, which was successful.
I thought they were just a release. I mustn't have been on this episode. I don't remember any of this.
Oh, well, no, we didn't go into the biological controls of it. We just said that our track record is not so great because of myxomatosis, because of cane toads and everything.
But did myxomatosis cause any problems? I mean, obviously it did for some rabbits.
It was only a temporary reduction in rabbits, but the numbers have since built up again. So I don't know if they've got under resistance.
It just didn't. Look, it was a very short-lived success, and then they introduced Calici virus, which has had a better effect, but it's still not. Yeah. Anyway.
And apparently, also with myxomatosis, it meant that foxes and cats no longer had so many rabbits to eat. So they started eating more native animals, including the young ones that were rabbit predators. So it's one of those things. There's all these flow-on effects that happen. But I think Michelle is right. We should address some of the success stories. And I think, Shane, if you've got a list of them...
Yeah, well, there's a short list that I found. So prickly pear is still a real problem, especially in the country. But in the 30s, apparently, we introduced a moth called Cactoblastus cactorum, which is a moth... I think it's a natural... It actually naturally eats prickly pear. And that apparently... reduced the amount of prickly pear in the countryside by a significant margin. So, yeah. And there's... Sorry?
A moth eating the pear.
Yeah, the pear, but also the whole plant. I mean, if you've ever seen prickly pear, it's a fairly horrible...
Cactus, isn't it?
Yeah, but it grows like the clappers. It's really... It's nasty, and it spreads really, really quickly. My father-in-law up in the country, he's got a place up in the country, and it's just infested with it. Yeah, apparently this moth has been a very effective control. So there we go. Yeah, apparently dung beetles. We've also introduced some dung beetles.
Yes, of course.
To essentially, well, you know.
They're kind of heroes, though, aren't they, dung beetles?
Oh, they're great. They do a job that no one should have to do, really.
Yes.
So what are the dung beetles control? What was the...
Apparently they stopped pest fly.
Who introduced this dung infestation that we have?
Well, according to the CSIRO website, and some other people might have some more information, but in the 60s and the 80s, we've introduced them to apparently get rid of the amount of dung. You know, I'm assuming dung from agricultural processes, like cow manure, and apparently this stops pest flies from breeding.
Okay.
And from and pasture fouling and things like that. So, in terms of an agricultural control, this seems fairly important. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, flies are a huge problem, which is why we have corks dangling from our hats all the time here in Australia.
Yes.
As we ride our kangaroo down the road.
No, but and even the release of myxomovirus, it has actually led to a decrease of the rabbit population, which is actually a huge problem. I mean, rabbits have decimated the Australian countryside ever since they were first introduced, thanks Europeans. But yeah, it's, as Michelle has said, there are some success stories, and we didn't necessarily tackle that very well. So
I'm glad we've addressed that. And that's our show, I think. We'll have all the links to the stories we talked about today at scienceontop.com/227. And you'll find all our social media links there as well. And of course, you can email us feedback@scienceontop.com. And please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps to spread the word and get other people listening. So thank you once again, Shane and Lucas.
Thanks, Ed.
This episode was edited with mastery and verve by Marcos Benamou. And thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back again next week, putting science on top of the agenda. Join us then.
Now it's finger licking, literally. Kentucky Fried Chicken this week unveiled a product in Hong Kong that it calls edible nail polish.
Yes, that tasty news went right around the globe this month as one of the world's biggest fast food chains launched its own chicken-flavoured nail polish. Yes, really. and the gullible media gobbled it up.
The finger-licking good nail polish range comes in 2 signature KFC flavours.
Original recipe, a light taupe with brown sparkles, and hot and spicy, a fire engine red with deep maroon sparkles.
It's designed to keep customers sucking and licking long after their meal is over.
In fact, this edible nail polish is designed to get people talking about the brand. And boy, did it succeed. So, is KFC actually planning to sell it? Answer, no. Or as a spokeswoman in Hong Kong told the BBC,
at the moment, we're not mass producing it. We're only giving previews to the media to test the market reaction.
Yes, the chicken-flavoured nail polish is just a publicity stunt created by an international ad agency.